John Papsidera, casting director for Fallout. The show is a reunion between you and Jonathan Nolan and Lisa Joy. What was it like working with them again?
It's like going home to family. I'm Lisa and Jonah and I have worked on multiple projects and over multiple years, and I've known Jonah since Memento. So it's a long relationship, and it's what I regard as the highest form of compliment. My most enjoyable process is being able to work with friends. So it was great.
Mhm. When they reach out, is it just like yes, no matter what it is?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. Yeah. I look, I think they have exquisite taste and are brilliant people, much brighter than I am. So I put myself in their hands and trusted implicitly.
hmm Well, were you familiar with Fallout the game before this?
I knew of Fallout the game and I had heard it. I am not a gamer. I did not dive into it. And I think, in thinking about this, I try and leave myself kind of a blank slate and whatever I've done, which there's been multiples of things that come before it, whether it's reference material or other movies or other novels, whatever it is, I try and stay away from the original material. So I was not going to then seek out to play Fallout, which might dishearten, a lot of gamers that do. But I try and remain a little bit as fresh eyes to a project because I trust that they know what they need to know about what comes with, the baggage of that.
For sure. Well, in this case too, it's an original story, so
Yeah.
you don't really need like too many references like
No,
with the
no, no,
game.
no.
So
Although they would bring up character names that
yeah,
they assumed that everyone would know, and I'm like, what?
like
No, I
no,
don't.
but
Yeah, no, no, no. And then we did some research. I did a little bit of research online just to find out what those characters and their backstories were. But
Mhm,
no, I try and enter into it pretty much as fresh as I can.
mhm. Well, Geneva, Robertson, Dorrit, and Graham Wagner, the
Yeah.
showrunners, they have said that they had Walton Goggins in mind for the Ghoul from the beginning. So did they
Yeah.
tell you this when you guys
Yeah,
met?
yeah, yeah. When we first started talking about it, we come up with lists and we talk about different ideas for the ghoul. And yeah, they were extensive and long, but everybody really agreed that Walt would be phenomenal if we could get him. And so that was a layup. I think, yeah, that was the first move we made is to go to Walt. And he
Wow.
read it and loved it, and we were thrilled.
He's also said like he just joined a Zoom with Jonah and he said yes before he knew anything about not having a nose.
I never heard that part, but yes, yeah, yeah. Walt was excited and enthusiastic after having looked at it and jumped in.
hmm Well, when, producers and showrunners have an actor in mind like that, are you just like, okay, let's make this happen? Or is it just like, let's have, come up other names as well in case like this doesn't work out?
Sure, yeah, and which is what we did. I mean, there was a
hmm
long list with a lot of different actors on there. And just the idea of a character named the Ghoul. I mean, that's fun to make a list and think about anyway. So there was a list, but again, after we started talking, everybody loved the idea of Walt because not only brilliant actor, but has comedy, has drama, has all those things that we wanted from that character, and so it was a really great fit, we thought.
hmm And when you do cast like a main, one of your three main roles like that, and it's like your number one choice basically, is it just like a relief? And it's like, okay, we move on to these. It's like you have like
Yeah,
your
I don't
anchor
know
for
that
the
I
show,
felt
you know?
such a relief right out of the
Yeah.
gate because there were so many other characters to deal with. But sure, I mean, getting that piece of the puzzle to build upon is
hmm
essential, especially in assembling any kind of ensemble. You start to put it together like a puzzle because those characters all relate to one another in a lot of different ways. This I tried to look at as a little bit more like the Wizard of Oz, in that, there's a core group of people that you have that interact and depend and um, have a different relationship with the world that they then start to explore. So, but that exploration of that new world was where the fun lied in a lot of ways for me. And so that's why I kind of, it's Alice in Wonderland, it's Wizard of Oz, it's all those things, which I think, Ella and Walton and Aaron were perfect to put in the center of.
Hmm. Yeah, and Ella Purnell plays Lucy. Like I feel like that's such a difficult character to cast and also play because she's so naive and she
Yeah,
has these morals. But you also don't want people to be annoyed by her, but she's also
right.
so warm and
Yeah.
charming. So what were you looking for when you were
Well, that is part of the hurdle. You want somebody that understands. It's like in theater when somebody plays Styles, the actor had to get the fact that she was in this artificial world and played a stylized version of a real human being. And I think Ella got that right out of the gate, which, a lot of actresses didn't. They would go too far into the style, or they would become two-dimensional because they were playing it that way, where it felt much more like, a skit or a sketch than it necessarily felt like a three-dimensional human being. And I think Ella combined those things in a real emotional way for us. And we could see this world and wanted to explore this world through her eyes, which she has magnificent eyes that don't bother, that help as well. Yeah, that doesn't hurt.
Mhm. She also has a great American accent.
She has a
So
brilliant
yeah.
American accent. That she
Mhm.
does. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, with Aaron Moten, he's the fresher face of the three.
Yes.
So what was that process like casting
That
Maximus?
was a tough one too. I mean, I'm thrilled that we found Aaron, and that, it was the missing link, the kind of the chain, or the link of chain in between two sturdy pieces that we had with Walt and with Ella. And finding Maximus was a little bit more of a search in a certain way, because he had to be young enough and vulnerable enough to believe within the story, yet he had to have an exterior and an attitude that was of a survivor in that world. And so marrying those two things, you had to find somebody that could play both extremes of that character. And Aaron was fantastic. I mean, the fact that you buy his age, you buy the relationship between he and Ella, yet you still feel the struggle of him wanting to be more than what he is. I think really kind of spoke to all of us. And when we read Aaron a couple of times, we all circled around that very quickly, kind of going, this could be our Maximus. And there he was.
Hmm. Yeah, and he and Ella also had a chemistry test on Zoom, right?
Yeah, they
They
did.
talk, yeah.
Yeah,
What
they
was
did.
that like? How do you do a chemistry test on Zoom?
Well, everybody asks that, and it's interesting because there's not the same thing as in a room, obviously, but what they projected came through the camera. And I always believe that, you're not doing live theater. So what you might feel in a room might not translate to a camera, and vice versa. So the fact that they were able to kind of connect over a camera, over the airwaves on a Zoom, lended more credence to the fact that, okay, we can see that they get one another, their styles complement one another, and there was chemistry there between the two of them. So yeah, we had to deal with the situation that we had by being over Zoom, but I still I'm a proponent to believe that you are looking at it in the medium that you are going to show it in. So
Yeah, for
there's
sure.
some value to that.
Mhm. Well, we have to talk about the guest cast because
Yeah,
you have so many fun cameos and like little bit guest stars, and
yeah,
it really makes the world feel lived in. And the
yeah,
show is very funny, and a lot of these people have a background in comedy too.
yeah.
And it was a mix of like stars and recognizable faces as well. So, how did this idea come about to have these type of people like pop in and out? You have like Chris Parnell, Michael Rappaport.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Graham and Geneva really were essential to that. Graham coming from that comedy world in a big way. We all got behind the idea. Again, for me, it was this idea of, the Wizard of Oz, and, them going down this trail, and who do they run into? And so, surprises along that way kept it really interesting. And so, you know, we played around with that idea a lot in trying to not only surprise ourselves about who would show up, but and creatively thinking about that, but also what a joy that would be. And, you know, ironically, I think, you know, it kind of emulates what a video game is. You never know what the next
That's
section is going
true.
to
Yeah.
show you. And
Hmm.
so not only was it styled in that manner, but I thought we fulfilled it because, you know, you got to the next level and you met another character. You get to another level and you meet another character. And so
Yeah, and then you leave them behind when you
yeah, you
land.
leave them behind. So long, see ya. So I really love that aspect of being able to put an ensemble, which is very different than if you're doing an ensemble about a group of friends or a family or something else. This provided us an opportunity for comedy, for surprises, for uniqueness, a lot of things that you don't always get to, you know, apply when you're building a core unit of people. And that's why, for me, that initial core unit then has a relationship that then goes out into this weird world, and we find all the weirdos.
Yeah, for sure. Well, John, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time,
Thank
and
you.
we'll see you back here in a little bit.
Okay, thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it.
Rachel Tenner, you've been Fargo's casting director since the beginning. So how do you approach each new season now?
Basically in the same way every time. You know, you get the scripts, it's a new story, but the thing about Fargo is tonally everything has stayed the same since the first season. You know, from the movie to the first season and throughout, that's always the number one thing is the tone of it. So in that regard, there's not that much different in the process of how you approach it. You know, it's just really the new characters and how you want to bring them to life and everything.
Hmm. So does Noah Hawley tell you anything about the season beforehand, or do you just wait for the scripts?
Not really. That's a good question. I don't think that I get much of a heads up until I read it. Yeah, you know what? I don't. I don't really get. Maybe once like something will seep through, you know, from a conversation, but I really don't have a sense of what's happening until I read the scripts.
Hmm. So
Yeah.
so what was your reaction when you read these scripts for season 5?
I love them. I love this one. I thought this season felt closest to maybe like the first season.
Hmm.
You know, it reminded me of that, and I just love the story, and it's exciting. You know, when you read these scripts, it's they're so vibrant. He's such a great writer. He really is. You know, when you read these, it's you're taken off into that land, and your brain starts going automatically. Like you already start, you know, thinking of your ideas and starting to like think about the list you want to start making and everything like that. I find them very inspiring when I read them.
Hmm.
And
Uh,
everything's different. Like no one's a repeat. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but
yeah.
it's
Oh, no,
not
no,
like
no. You
not
could continue
repetitive.
talking.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like every, you know, every season's a different story and every, you know, the characters, they don't feel repetitive. Although, I mean, I guess you'd tell me if you thought they did, but to me it doesn't when I read it. So
I love the casting in the show because I feel like you guys cast like well-known names, but they also feel like outside of the box in the casting. And even someone like Juno Temple for this season as Dot, like, you know, obviously now everyone knows her from Ted Lasso, but she's also been around for a really long time. So it's
exactly.
like you're kind of casting an actor you've been aware of for a while, but now she has this like hugely popular role. So it's also kind of like subverting expectations too. Was that something you had in mind when
I
you
don't
cast
like
her?
we certainly don't think about it when we're doing it to say
Mhm.
like, oh, this will be clever if we take someone who's known for this and make them do this. It's a lot more organic than that, you know, whether they feel like they're right for the role and what they can bring to it. But you're right, like someone like Juno, I have known obviously for forever, you know, from a ton of projects that she's done. So I had a bigger, broader sense of who she was as an actor outside of Ted Lasso. So I think that brought us to her in an easier, faster way around that. It is, however, fun, and it might be part of the subconscious of it all. Is thinking of people, you know, that you'd like to see, like someone that you've known can do that something different and just hasn't had the chance to, and getting to use them that way. Like you know, I'm sure everyone here on our panel would agree. Like that's one of the more exciting things to do, you know, and let the world see a different gear for them.
For sure. I mean, like
Yeah.
similarly with John Hamm to this season, that I mean, I think we know he can do comedy. He's incredibly funny, but this performance also, you know, darker, a little bit more menacing.
Right.
So how did his name come about?
You know, he was kind of an easier discussion because obviously again, he's got a huge body of work, and Noah had also worked with him in his feature. So that was a much easier discussion around John and understanding what he's capable of doing and where we want to take him with this. I think sometimes it's kind of like, does that actor want to go there?
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, does he want to present himself that way? Because that character is pretty out there, but in the best way. But you know, and he seems game for anything. So
I feel like John Hamm would say yes to nipple rings immediately.
immediately, exactly. And that's such a big part of the discussion, the nipple rings. Like, I feel like we had so many talks about those nipple rings.
Oh,
But
like
yeah,
just like what they would look like, or just
I
like,
think it's just kind of like making sure people understand that,
yeah.
you know, who this character is, because it is such a defining part of who the character is.
Mhm.
Oddly, I know it's such a simple thing, but just, you know, making sure everyone's comfortable
Yeah,
with it. It's so
for
weird to say.
sure. And
20,
then you have the Coen brothers connection with Jennifer Jason Leigh.
right, right.
So was like, is that the reason you guys went after her for this part, or?
I mean, I think there's again, because tone is such a big piece of
Mhm.
it, and when we're lucky enough to get somebody who's been in the cone world and knows how to navigate that space, it is an easier process. But that wouldn't be why we went to her. You know, it's kind of like the icing on the cake. I think we were excited to. I mean, she's just the depth to her is remarkable. I mean, she's
Yeah.
got a body of work that is insane. And so I think that we were excited to kind of see her do some of those, you know, like use some of those muscles again and some comedy too.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's just like, it's fun for the fans to make the connection.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I remember that when that Hudsucker part, you know, I'll never forget that, you know. She's like, I'll
Mhm.
bet my Pulitzer on it, you know, like it
Yeah.
sticks with you forever. So we were excited to get her.
Hmm. Well, for some of the supporting parts, like, you know, like what we were talking about before, like Joe Keery is Gator, you know, now like, you know, everyone knows him from Stranger Things, but this
Right.
was like such a great, like, wow, like who knew kind of performance from him. So what was it like auditioning him for that part?
It was great. I, you know, was grateful that he wanted to go through the process of it and let us, you know, show everyone what, you know, what else he's capable of doing. And I mean, I think a lot about our jobs, you know, collectively, again, everyone would say the same thing, is that, you know, we hope as casting directors that we're seeing a bigger picture of an actor than maybe you are or what audiences are, you know, so that we can take that leap. And then hopefully you have producers and directors who share that same vision or share that same passion or share that same openness to just make those leaps. You know, a lot about Fargo, I feel like over all these seasons is just taking a leap and being like, I'm sure he'll get it. I'm sure he'll get there. You know what I mean? Like, let's just go for it. And I can't think of a single person who has not risen to the occasion.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like
Yeah.
and it's like some parts are also, or like performances are like surprising too, where it was like a discovery sort of like
Yeah.
Sam Spruill as Old Munch. I feel like that probably was difficult to cast, just like, you
That
know,
was a hard
the
one to
characters. Yeah.
cast.
So what was it like finding him
Our
for that
sugar,
part?
right? That it wasn't a hard one to cast that we couldn't find it.
Hmm.
It just was so, as you know, as you've seen it, like that role is very complicated and unique. And we got to do a big search for it. So that was fun, you know, just a really big European. I mean, yeah, it was definitely more European based search. So it was fun to see and meet a whole bunch of new actors. And obviously Sam, someone we knew from before as well, and who found those qualities of Munch and just kind of brought it to life in this very quiet, odd way that was both funny and chilling,
For sure.
you know?
How important is it that they're able to nail the Minnesotan accent? Because you'll have like a dialect coach, you know,
Right.
once
We
they
always
know.
have a dialect coach. We've had the same dialect coach. We've actually, I think we used this coach that we use actually did the movie for Fargo. And then she's also been a part of the series since the beginning. So we have some kind of continuity that way. And I don't think it's important for them to nail it in the auditions. It's, you know, I think we just say, if you can throw in maybe like a slight version of it, just to kind of hear it a little bit, because the rhythm.
Just say an "aw geez" or
right. Oh,
Yeah.
geez, right. You know, I'm from Chicago, if you can't tell anyway, so my A's are so twangy. And to go to Minnesota, I just have to take my O's and go O's, you know.
Yeah.
You take your O's.
It's just
But,
like the Minnesota nice. So
what's that?
the Minnesota nice.
Yeah,
just
Minnesota nice. Like it's yeah, absolutely. When I did A Serious Man, I went and lived in Minnesota for a few months when we did that movie. And so we were like knee deep in, I mean, it's not
all the Minnesota nice that you can
it's
get.
all the Minnesota. It was the best. It's the best. It's like the best place. Minneapolis is so fun. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, one thing I love about Fargo is the character names. I feel like Fargo has the best character names in the game. I don't know what's going on in Noah's mind, but do you like keep the names in mind, like Danish Graves or like Gator Tillman? Do you keep that in mind when you're casting? Like, because in real life you're like, you know, sometimes you're like, oh, he doesn't look like a Robert, she doesn't look like an Amanda. But so do you think about the names when you're reading people?
No. I don't. I think that, I mean, you would never change it because like it's like
No, you would never change the name, but it's just funny to think about like the, you know, like I think it's more reading it, like the names that he comes up with. And then it's like, oh, so and so is playing this character with this weird
and
name.
also when you read all the scripts and you go through it and everything, you're associating the character description with the name. So when you're really trying to actualize who the character is, then it just kind of
the description
goes with the name. You know, it just like slides right in. Yeah, Danish Graves is a great one though.
Yeah.
I do love that name.
We need to rank Fargo names. That's
oh my God. Yeah. That would be funny. I didn't even think about that.
Is there any word on a season 6 yet? I know he's busy with Alien.
Right. I think you know what? I'm not gonna say anything.
Okay.
I feel like that would be, if I say anything one way or another, I'll be wrong and it will come back to haunt me.
He can take his time, that's fine. So
yeah, exactly. No, he is doing Alien. So if it was something that was going to happen, it wouldn't happen for like a little while for sure.
Well, Rachel, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back in a little bit.
Okay.
Dan Hubbard, casting director for The Gentleman. This show is a spinoff of Guy Ritchie's film. Were you a fan of the film?
Yes, I was. I actually saw the movie during lockdown while I was locked down with my folks in Ireland, and we all admired the film greatly. And I remember my father talking about how well constructed and acted and cast it was by Lucinda Syson. I happened to have the relationship with Guy at the time, but I had no idea that he had a series in the works.
So when did the show come to you?
Probably just early 2022, as far as I remember. There were talks about it, and I was called to Guy's house, and the writers pitched it to me. But there was so much going on that the storylines weren't really going in. I was just nodding a lot, but I got the general gist and flavor of the show from that meeting. Yes.
So what was it like an immediate yes for you, and do you feel any like pressure because you know this was a film already to like kind of live up to any fans' expectations of the show being similar to the film?
It's a very good question. Yeah, I mean, I was very overwhelmingly intimidated by living up to Lucinda Syson's cast, but it was made clear that we were rebooting the cast completely because it was a different story within the same universe. So from that point of view, it was really exciting to get the opportunity to rebuild that world, but do it justice, but not necessarily having to have as A-lister cast as the original movie.
Yeah, you're not casting Matthew McConaughey or no.
Well, there might have been discussions, but I think in the end we decided to keep both those projects separate. But who knows? There might be more movies in the future.
Sequel. There you go. I understand that Theo James or the show was shooting or started production when the White Lotus season 2 had just started airing. So you guys already cast Theo James. So what was that like knowing that he was on this other show and his star was gonna rise while you already cast him as the lead of this show when you were in production?
Well, I'm trying to remember, had The White Lotus come out by the time we'd cast Theo? Actually, I think, yeah, I think we had to cast Theo the same way as everyone else. He didn't get a straight offer, so to speak. He had, like, everybody had to sing for their supper eventually and read for us. Initially, I don't think Theo wanted to read, but to get him approved finally, because it was such a jigsaw puzzle and building that family, and making sure that their chemistry was right. Daniel Ings and Theo, we had to get everyone to read, but the most important part of it was getting Theo to screen test with Dan Ings to make sure that they had that dynamic.
Yeah. Was it important to cast someone as Eddie, someone who's British as Eddie, like just like for like an innate understanding maybe of like British aristocracy and like
yeah, I mean, it's UK is a very class obsessed place to a certain extent, so it would definitely have to require a certain amount of understanding from the actors as to how these things work. So yeah, getting people like Theo and Dan who really understand that, that whole kind of the separate universes of the guy on the street and the guy in the mansion, and all the sort of dynamics and complications and politics that come with it. They definitely had to understand that world, but also be adaptable. So in a sense, Theo was so good for that, because he's just so trustworthy and alpha and straight down the middle, whereas Dan is more of a wild card and certainly could come out there with all the sort of out there-ness of Freddie in the moment.
For sure. Well, Dan has also said that you really advocated for him for the role. So why did you know that he was right for Freddie?
Well, that's a good question. And I mean, I've known Dan for quite a long time, and he's come in for lots of things, and I'm sure that my esteemed colleagues in the panel have seen him loads. But I think it was the show I Hate Susie that I saw him in, which is starring Billy Piper, Colleen Crawford cast, which I was a big fan of. But that really, got me to see the sort of darkness and the rawness and the desperation of the character of Freddie, but also, his kind of charm as well. And also being able to kind of make that whole relationship work with Billy Piper was what sold it to me for Freddie. I suppose also Sex Education. He's got loads of comedic moments in that, but Dan really did it for himself in the moment, especially once he was plonked in there on day one in the chicken suit.
Great moment.
Hats off to any actor who can pull that off.
Did you, so you didn't picture him in the chicken costume when you were thinking of him?
I might have, yes, yeah. Hopefully we'll see him in it again in some future.
Ooh, yeah, we can't have too much, but every now and then the clucking can come back. Well, what about Kaya Scodelario as Susie? She and Theo also said like they had never met before they were cast, and they also have great chemistry. So did they have a chemistry read as well for it?
Do you know, I don't think we had time, unfortunately. I've always been a massive fan of Kaya's ever since Skins. She was my favorite character in this UK show called Skins. She played the character of Effie, and so she's kind of like a cult legend amongst the younger generation. My daughter, who's 23, is a massive fan, and I just think she's fantastic, Kaya. and we needed somebody who had that strength without moving. You know, she's got to be intimidating, but also it was very important that we had somebody that understood that world. And she's from a place called the Harrow Road in London, so it's quite a tricky place. And she just had that experience, that real life experience, to really empower the character of Susie, because I think Susie's probably the most intimidating character of the lot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Well, if they, so how can you tell if actors will have chemistry if they can read together? Yeah, do you just hope they do once they show up to set?
We I don't know. I just felt so strongly about Theo being right for sorry, I forgot the name of the role now.
Eddie.
Eddie. I just knew what he'd do with it. And I don't know, he's quite a handsome chap, Theo James, to a lot of people. Hugo Boss model and all the rest of it. I don't think I've met many people who don't seriously swoon in his presence, men and women. I have faith in actors a lot of the time when I've seen their work before, and also with a director like Guy Ritchie, who is just brilliant to work with. He gets the best out of the actors, and he has a sort of process which everybody has to adhere to. It is a leap of faith, but it was just an added bonus. But of course, when the characters first meet, they're very standoffish, and there's a lot of distrust, and we don't know whether she's a goodie or a baddie. So I felt that they're such fine actors, and you know, they are the core of the characters, that eventually they'd find it in time. And so all those little moments off camera and the little nods and the winks came from them, actually. So really testament to the actors.
Yeah, for sure. And I love that like they're not romantic partners too, and like, you know, they really resisted that in the show as well.
So refreshing, so refreshing. Just a mutual respect through whatever they're getting up to.
For sure. Well, you hinted before like about a season 2. Is there any word yet?
Yes, it's looking good. I think. I haven't officially been told yet, but I definitely think there is one in the works. Of course, it's all about getting the same cast back together. So I await further instructions.
Okay, so more chicken costume.
Yes, exactly. Maybe some more. Maybe there's a gang of chickens in this one.
There you go. Well, Dan, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. We'll see you back here in a little bit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Carmen Cuba, casting director for Mr. and Mrs. Smith. The show was first announced 3 years ago, and casting directors are often like the first people involved with the project. So what is it like for you to finally have the show out in the world after such a long time?
It's exciting, of course, to see our work, and also a lot of times it's the first time we see it. I see dailies in many cases, but in this one I think everything was so busy that really seeing it at the same time as everyone else was my experience, and it was really exciting. It came out, the vision of it matched how it landed on screen, so it was very exciting.
Well, the show also underwent a big casting change, because Phoebe Waller-Bridge was originally Jane Smith, and she left the show. So when you get the news that we need to do a recast for one of the leads, like what is that conversation like, and what do you discuss? Like, do you look for someone who is, you know, not like Phoebe Waller-Bridge, because we have Maya Erskine in the role now?
Yeah, actually for me, in any time I'm casting, if I have an idea and that idea doesn't pan out, I'm just realizing this about myself recently, actually. I just go for another big idea. I don't really stay in the same space as what that original idea was, because in a way it feels like then you're going to sort of a second tier version of that, and I prefer to just sort of come at it fresh with something exciting that sort of turns it on its head and creates its own new thing. And with Maya, I mean, I'd been a huge fan of hers, her work on Pen 15. I think it's just brilliant. And from that, when I was casting Obi-Wan, I thought she should be a Jedi. And I could not believe that she said yes, or had time, or
I mean, well, who would say no to being a Jedi?
I mean, some people might think it's nuts, but also she had just had a baby. So
Mhm.
I did not think timing would, any of it would work out, but it did. And so then you know, she was in my sort of world in that way. And so I just thought she was the first one that came to mind for me. And then it turns out that various people on the creative team were all sort of thinking about her at the same time. So it was kismet. Great.
What do you think it is about her that everyone was like kind of on the same page, like with like Francesca Sloane, like
Yeah.
Kara Marai and Donald Glover, probably?
I think that it's just that she's singular and that you could imagine a version of her opposite Donald that could be, you know, the word that comes to mind is unpredictable.
Mhm.
Because Donald is also unpredictable, and not necessarily in an improv kind of way, but sort of improving energetically, if that makes sense. As well as improv. I mean, the two of them, watching the two of them on set, just going on and on, even after the scene is done, they sort of would stay in it and just keep bantering. And, you know, obviously that's high level comedy and actually chemistry. Like it was really also unexpected, I think.
Yeah, I think when her casting was announced, like a lot of the reaction was like, huh, but then it was like, actually that sounds interesting and it does work. Like when you see them on screen playing off of each other, and it's like I don't think it's like an obvious choice, which goes back to you, like, you know, what
Yeah.
you were saying before about taking a big swing in like another direction.
Yeah, and also I think what was interesting, which I don't think we really thought about or talked about, is the idea that they also have to not have chemistry.
Mhm.
These characters have chemistry. It's like the push and pull of it.
Yeah,
You
because
really
they're
need to feel
strangers and
that.
like they're forced
So
into
yeah.
these. Mhm.
Yeah, so it's funny because when I imagine any other version, like you can't predict this couple, and
Mhm.
that's very exciting to me.
Yeah. Well, the show also has a very impressive and loaded guest cast. You have Alexander Skarsgård, like Ron Perlman, Sarah Paulson, Parker Posey, Wagner Moura, Michaela Cole, Sharon Horgan, Paul Dano, could go on and on. So, how did this come about? Like, which ones of these were written with someone in mind, and which weren't? I know, like, I think like Donald's friends with Michaela, right? So that was kind of like an easy in. But, which ones were these where you had to like, you know, think of people to cast?
Well, first off, we never thought of them as guest stars. We thought of them as the stars within each episode, which was meant to feel like a short film.
Mhm.
And that's also how we pitched it, and agents were very excited, actors were very excited. Who did we have my list here of who? It wasn't really written for anyone. Michaela, he definitely was excited to find something for. So, and you know, she's usually focused on her own writing. So again, it was like tricky scheduling. We were just sort of hoping she would say yes. And this part was there. So we never looked for that or sort of had to come up with ideas, but really all of them. We spent a lot of time thinking about all of them, but it was really like being in a sandbox with your favorite toys and just kind of going like, who of our favorites? You know, I'm close to Donald and a lot of this team, and so like I've known that he has had an actor crush on Parker Posey for years, so I've been looking for a place to put them together, and this was perfect. And again, an unexpected choice
Mhm.
for particularly for that character. And Wagner Moura, I'd worked on Narcos with, and I knew of his transformation on that show. He's like, you know, he gained all this weight and he learned Spanish, and the way he looks on Narcos is not at all how he looks in real life. So the opportunity to show him as his, you know, gorgeous, sexy, version of himself was really made sense. And again, that coupling, I think the show is obviously about marriage and couples. And for us, it was most exciting to sort of put together these people that just slightly wouldn't be predictable and don't necessarily make
Yeah.
sense, even
But
those
then
two.
once you see them on screen and the dynamic, it does make sense.
Yeah. And it also, to me, created this energy of the conversation around marriage being like weird and uncomfortable and like, how do we end
Yeah,
up
because I guess like we
together?
all like people are just like, oh, like he's with her or she's with him. And it's like,
Yeah.
huh. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm
Um,
trying to think what other
well, I know
yeah.
one thing I love about like these you know, stars of their own episodes is like it also some of them also subvert expectations, like Ron Perlman, who I know is Francesca's father-in-law, but he's
Yeah.
playing a giant baby, which is just a metaphor for John and Jane having a kid instead of like a typical
Yeah.
badass. And then
Yeah.
Paul Dano is the hot neighbor, and you might think of someone more like conventionally like
Yeah.
six-pack abs attractive, but it's like it's about like who Jane finds attractive. And
Yeah.
it's Paul Dano.
Yeah, and also just again the Donald Glover world and what the translations of all of those words. We definitely talked about what does hot mean, and what's hot to women and what's hot to men. And you're right, like there was a big conversation about like, should this be the traditional six-pack guy? And I'm so happy we landed with Paul because he's so brilliant. And
Paul Dano
again,
is hot. So
yeah, he
Yeah.
is. And the our audience would think he's hot. You know, someone else's audience would find, you know, the sort of more traditional actor right for that role. But for us, we were like, yeah, this is hot.
yeah, he is. He's hot neighbor. I love how some of them don't even have names. It's like Sarah Paulson, therapist.
Yeah, which can sometimes be tricky, you know, because sometimes actors like want a name and they associate that with their part being more important or something, but I think everyone was really on board with what we were trying to do, and the writing, obviously, for me, it always starts with the writing. The writing was just there and so fun for people to play, so they were down for anything.
Mhm. Well, one of the breakout stars of the season is Donald Glover's mom, Beverly, who
I
plays
was
his mom on
hoping
the
that's what you
show.
thought was one of the breakouts.
Yeah, she is a complete natural. So did he
She's
just
a
come up and he
real
was like,
natural.
we don't need to cast as my mom will do it? How did that happen?
No, I have
Oh,
known
you suggested
Beverly.
it.
I've
Okay.
known Beverly for a long time, and I don't know if Donald was thinking about it, but I was like, "There's no way it is going to be anyone other than her." I didn't know if we could convince her, but it didn't. She was game. That whole family, you know, they are performers just as themselves. And she is very witty and she's, you know, you see, she's brilliant. I'm
Yeah.
now trying to get her to do other things and she's like, just hold on.
And does she have an agent yet? Is she signing anywhere? Like, come
No,
on.
trust me, I'm slowly gonna lead her down the
Well,
path.
we need a season 2, and we need more of Beverly as the niece in season 2.
We do need more.
Yeah.
And you know, Michaela's character is named Beverly, by the way.
Yes, I did notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I was like, who's playing his mom? I was like, oh, it's his actual mom.
It's his actual mom. And I was also part of what empowered me with that idea, even to bring it up, was that Maya's mom played her mom on Pen
Oh yeah,
15.
in Pen 15. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Maya's mom's amazing and just like very able to be herself. And there's no doubt when you meet Beverly that she will be able to be herself in
We love Nepo parents. So
love it.
yeah.
Family
Well,
business is what
it's
it is.
true.
That's right.
Well, Carmen, it was great speaking with you. Thanks so much for your time. You could stay on because everyone's coming back.
Thank you.
Welcome to our Meet the Experts casting directors panel. Today we're joined by John Papsidera from Fallout, Rachel Tenner from Fargo, Dan Hubbard from The Gentleman, and Carmen Cuba from Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Thank you all for being here. Casting, I don't think is like typically a profession that, you know, many little kids dream of becoming. But when did you guys know that this is the career for you? John, let's start with you.
I think hopefully that's changing. I think people now are recognizing that it is a profession, that it is a career and a craft, and hopefully it brings, you know, the kids' dreams come true, you know, in some ways. I had studied as an actor, and after I'd gotten out of graduate school, I knew I wanted to be back in the entertainment business, and went through a process of figuring out what I didn't want to do. And I had one of my best friends in casting, and so it led me down a path that, you know, I can be nothing but grateful for today.
Mhm. Dan, how about you?
Well, yeah, speaking of Nepo kids, I come from a family of casting directors, which my mother started a long time ago in Dublin, probably the 80s. And so I've kind of grown up around the casting circus all my life. I've been around actors, I've been taken to the theater a lot, as my mother was covering shows, and just being around directors, producers socially, and I suppose it by osmosis it dripped into me. But I wasn't totally keen on casting to start off with. I wanted to study film, but didn't quite get into the place I really wanted to get into, the National Film School. So I suppose in the mid-90s, I came to earn money simply, but I loved it so much I never left. Now I see it as it's so much more than just you know, how people see casting. I think when people go to see films, they look at the credits afterwards and they think that it's just a few phone calls, and you know, the directors and the producers' friends are, you know, spotting people on the street. But it's way more complicated than that. You're you know, you're a trusted diplomat between two entities, and you do right by both of them. You do what's best for the production, your director's vision. But it's also about taking care of people and having insight and knowing when you can step in and improve a situation when it comes to the casting. There's all sorts of things, and I'm constantly learning on the job. But I'm glad I took the leap.
Yeah, sure. And you still work in film, so there you go. Yeah.
Mostly film, yes.
Rachel, how about you?
I kind of felt that I always wanted to be in the industry, and I was trying to figure out in what avenue it would be. I was obsessed with Letterman. Like, that was my whole thing. I wanted to write for David Letterman. That's all I wanted to do. Like, I used to sleep out. I was at NYU, so I would sleep out for his show and all that. And then when I realized that I don't know how to write and can't write, that led me down the path of trying to figure out what it was. So I interned for a producer in New York, and then I went back to Chicago and interned for like a talent agency. And then when I was there, a fax came over, when there used to be fax machines, and they were looking for an internship for a casting director. I mean, casting, you know, like an intern for a casting agency. And I went over there, and they were doing Hudsucker Proxy.
Wow.
And I was like, I don't even know what this job is, but I just loved it. Like, it connected, and it's the thing that I've connected to the most. This is when I was like 21. And so then I ended up, just because of the timing was right in a way. So I was like an intern, then I was part-time, full-time, and I bought the company all within like 2 years. So then I had a company in Chicago for many years, and then was, you know, I was film and TV were my passion. And so I thought that I would come to LA and, you know, give it all a shot here. And it ended up that Ellen Chenoweth had called my office in Chicago, and I said, "Oh, I'm thinking about going to LA. Let me know if you know of anything." And she was going out to do Joel and Ethan's movie, and she's like, "Why don't you come be my associate and see what see what you think?" And then I went out, and then I loved it. You know what I mean? It was really, I mean, I loved it. And then I ended up doing like, you know, a ton of movies with her and with Joel and Ethan, and then went on my own after that. So that was kind of my story.
Now you gotta cast Dave in something.
Now I have to cast who?
David Letterman in something.
Oh my God. Oh my God. I love, it's funny when you look back at who you were like back then, like now that you're in the
Yeah.
industry and you realize like what it takes to even achieve anything in general, just in any of the fields. Like my love that I was like, I'm going to write for Letterman.
Mhm.
Like, sure, that's an easy job. I tried to get that NBC Page job and I didn't even get that.
You can become a Kenneth. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, exactly. But you know, then everything's for a reason, right? Like you just get
Mhm.
put down your path and I got, you know, and then casting, it's the only thing I've ever done. So
Mhm.
hopefully I can just ride this one out into the sunset because otherwise I
It's
don't have
going
any
pretty
other,
well, so.
okay, I don't have any other vocation possibilities.
Carmen, how about you?
I started out as a journalist. I thought that's what I would do, but I worked as a field reporter for Spanish language television in New Mexico for a couple of years and realized that it wasn't really the depth of interaction, human interaction that I was really looking for. I always wanted to follow home anyone that I interviewed, like, oh, you were in a car accident. Now, how did this affect you for the rest of your life, kind of thing? Which just sort of started to show me that storytelling and humans was really sort of my passion. And then I moved to LA and through a series of events, one taking place in an elevator with somebody just starting up a conversation with me, I ended up working at MTV on the second season of The Real World, which was an extension for me from journalism. It was like at that point it was documentary, and so again I got to really explore there. And then in the MTV space, they sort of just started throwing me everything. They were, you know, I did the replacement for Jenny McCarthy on Singled Out. I did, Sarah Gilbert did a pilot. I didn't even know what a pilot was. I just sort of was saying yes to everything, but it just kept being very stimulating of my storytelling and my human interaction kind of thing. And I got to the sort of place there where I'd done everything and it felt like it was time to look for a grown-up job. And someone connected me to Margie Simpkin, who's a big casting director and legend. And, you know, they warned me it would be very challenging, and I was up for a challenge. And I somehow convinced her, after many times of her turning me down, to hire me. And the first project I worked on was Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. And having that experience with her and with Terry Gilliam was it was a huge spark for me. I grew up watching, my parents watched foreign films. My dad's Peruvian, my mom's American, and I lived in Peru and Bolivia as a kid. And so I just sort of it hadn't occurred to me to pursue it, but that moment, you know, sitting in auditions, I was running the camera with Terry Gilliam drawing caricatures of each actor that came in and like leaving them on the ground after he left, leaving them, you know, on the desk after he left. Was just, this interaction was really stimulating to me. And so I worked with her for a while on really exciting projects, all different directors who were, to me, just seemed so, I mean, they are geniuses. Steven Soderbergh, Frank Oz, Ted Demme. And then I went out on my own and I started with Larry Clark, who's a director who uses a lot of real people as well as actors, so that sort of blended my background together and was a great transition into all of it.
Mhm.
I still, when I'm casting, I still realize, even if I'm doing The Matrix, I feel like I'm still doing it from a journalist perspective of like, what would authentically be in this world that is, even if it's completely made
What's
up.
the truth?
Yeah. What's the truth?
That's
Yeah.
so fascinating. I'm curious, like what's an interesting choice an actor has made in an audition that really impressed you, that made you go like, huh, I never thought about playing the character this way until you just did it now. John?
Look, I think there's tons of them that have, and for me, that's what stays with me. You know, a lot of people will ask, you know, what was the worst audition you had, or what did somebody do? And that's not what stays with me. What stays with me are moments when people, you know, rise to the occasion and you see glimpses of genius in them. And I mean, my first real experience of it, and it still sticks with me, and I'll tell this story quickly. I still get chills over it, is I was doing a movie ages ago with John Goodman, and we had read for the female lead a lot of girls in town and in the business, and everybody, they were playing a secretary, and everybody that came in either brought a pad and a pen, and he was giving a dictation of a letter. And one of the final auditions was Anne Heche, God bless her soul, came in and made the choice that she was smart enough, she took no notes. She just sat in the chair and listened to him give this page-and-a-half speech, got up, walked out, came back in, and handed him the typed letter. And, you know, the choice being, she was smart enough to remember every word that he said. And it still gives me chills. It's still an actor interpreting a role in a different way and bringing their own creativity to it. And, you know, those are the moments that, you know, I feel like I'm in the presence of an artist, and that I cherish.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, that's something that would definitely stick in your mind when you go through like hundreds of similar auditions the same day. Rachel, how about you?
Well, I can barely remember what happened yesterday, so I'm gonna have to limit this to just like something recent on Fargo. But I think part of the excitement for me is like, you know, it's the same kind of thing we're talking about. Like you're seeing so many people, you know, read for things, and you can, when someone elevates it or is a rhythmic, or there's something, you know, choices they make that are different, it is very exciting. And also it's when you have something in your head, you know, and someone comes in and just brings it to life, you know, in front of you, that is like, that's thrilling. Like for me, that was like David Rysdale this season for Fargo, you know, for the husband role. Like when he did it, I was like, oh my God. I mean, I don't even think I saw anyone else like that. We were just like, that's it. There, you know, like check mark, you know.
I
And
totally
that
bought him
moment
as
is also just,
a Kia salesman. Just
yeah,
like
it's just,
the nicest
you
husband.
know, to see it come to life like that, the way you always saw it in your head when you're reading and you're thinking of people, and then you see it like just perfect. I think that's a really exciting moment.
Carmen, how about you?
It's funny when you ask the question, the first thing that comes to mind, and I swear it's not just because we're talking about Mr. and Mrs. Smith, is when Donald came in on the Ridley Scott movie, The Martian. We'd been seeing a lot of people for that part, and it's, you know, he was a worker, he was a person who works at the JPL, and it was sort of by the books kind of thing, and he came in and just did this thing that was like not at all what I expected and not at all what anyone else had done, and really brought, I mean, he brought humor even though he wasn't being funny. And it was really surprising. So that one actually does always stand out for me. And then I guess Ridley said that Ridley felt the same way on the day when he was shooting him. He was like, he was incredible. You know, he was like, there was so much surprise to Ridley, and he's someone that's sort of hard to surprise. So
Oh, for sure.
it's very satisfying.
That's another part where I'm just like, I don't know if I would have thought of Donald for this, but he was great in that movie. So
Thank you.
Dan, how about you?
I suppose in probably reference to The Gentleman, that happened when we were casting the role of Jimmy. Jimmy is in charge of the weed farm down in the underground vault underneath the estate. And we'd seen a number of really talented actors for it, but they felt a little bit kind of actory and slightly rigid. And we wanted like a real world, Wild West London subculture kind of crazy layer upon layer feel. And I remember seeing a film called Another Hood, which was like a kind of hood comedy, which very talented director Adam Deacon directed. And I went to the premiere about like 10, 12 years ago. And I always remember this great actor. And on the page, Jimmy was Chinese. and Guy and the team weren't quite sort of sold. You know, they would have hired one of these really talented guys, but we're just missing that authenticity. And in the moment, I just remembered that film, and I was like, all right, I've got to find him. He didn't have an agent. So I got in touch with one of the producers who was an actor, and he gave me his number, and he came in to read, and he wasn't off book or anything. He just had 2 or 3 scenes to play with. He was just so nice, but couldn't believe that he was there. He was like, you know, I'm not an actor. Nobody asked me to do this. And when I presented him to Guy just said, look, if you hire one person on this show, it's got to be that guy. So that's probably my
Yeah, that's also like a little
Yeah.
outside the box too. So more creative. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
like.
mm,
Well, finally, casting is, you know, such an integral part of filmmaking, and you're all here for shows, and the Emmys obviously have a casting category. What do you think about the Oscars finally adding a casting category? Rachel, let's start with you.
Well, I mean, I think it's amazing. I feel bad for John. I feel like we should
Maybe we should start with John there.
let him get, get a piece of that, because that was, outstanding.
Retroactively, they should do it.
What's
Yeah.
that?
Retroactively, they should give
I
them
know. I thought maybe for the first year, like everybody should just put in their best film they ever did, and then, let someone win retroactively. But no, it's thrilling. I mean, just as much as we're an integral part of, television, it's the same thing for features. I mean, you're creating every movie has a cast, and every cast has been created or, contributed to by a casting director. And it's nice to have that recognized. And I'm excited. I can't wait to see who's going to get it first. It's really exciting.
I know that's gonna be fun. I can't wait either. It's
Yeah.
gonna be a little bit, but
Yeah.
John, how about you? Should we retroactively send you an Oscar for
Yes.
Oppenheimer?
Oh, that's very kind of you to say, Rachel. But look, I'm thrilled for, casting directors that are coming up and people that I work with and are in my office. It is about time that, casting directors were recognized. I'm glad and grateful to the people that, work doggedly to make it happen. And it is exciting. I was talking to somebody about it, and it'd be nice if the person that won the first one accepted on behalf of all the casting directors that
Right.
came before us that did not get the opportunity to be recognized. And so it is exciting, and yet it's a little bittersweet because it is, so long in coming.
Yeah, it's kind of insane. It's taken so long. So
Yeah.
we're
That was-
nearing 100 years. So
That's so true, though, to point out how tenacious the people who made this happen on our behalf, how hard they worked to make this happen. Just literally, like, through not giving up for so many years. It's really quite a feat.
I also think it's so interesting that so next year's the first year we're eligible, and filmmaking has changed so much just in these last couple of years. So I think what it will reflect will also just be, a new thing, which I think for a lot of us, it's just the things that we were making before were, I don't even know what I'm trying to say, but it's like the kinds of movies that we used to make, they're not really making. John, you get to
like when you guys have started. Yeah.
Yeah,
years,
I just think really character-driven things
Mhm.
are existing a lot actually in the TV space,
Yeah.
Right.
so I feel lucky that we have both options now to play in and to be recognized, but it will be interesting. It's a new era.
Yeah. Dan, how about you?
Well, nothing really much more to add apart from, Kubrick once said that casting is 80% of a film. And a lot of the time we are kind of saviors in the situation because gaining the right leading actors sort of makes a film and sets off the finance. And a lot of the time we've been on some of these films for 2 or 3 years, maybe longer. because we believe in them so much. And you know, the leading actors in Hollywood have a lot of power, and it's our job to really try and spread the message if we really believe in a script passionately. And I like to think that some of the good work that we do does help change the world in a positive way. You know, if we hold that in our hearts and we manage to express that to actors and their teams, who are not just in it for the money, they're in it for, you know, for the good things as well, for art. That's why we're here. So I'm delighted that it's finally going to happen for my esteemed colleagues.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, hopefully Oscars and Emmys for all of you in the future. It was great speaking with all of you. Thank you so much for your time. And congratulations again on all of your shows.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have a
you.
good one.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
guys.